Awesome. So hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Diana Vasquez, like I mentioned, and I'm the BERDO Review Board Manager. So before we start this meeting, the BERDO Review Board does not currently have an appointed chair, so I will lead us in a vote for acting chair. Does anyone on the board want to make a nomination for acting chair today?
I'll nominate Steve Ellis.
Thank you, Board Member Nelson. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Board Member Faruqi. So on the motion to nominate Board Member Ellis to serve as acting chair, how do you vote? In favor, oppose, or abstain? Board Member Boyd?
In favor.
Board Member Ellis?
In favor.
Board Member Faruqi?
In favor.
And Board Member Nelson?
In favor.
Great. I will now hand the meeting over to Acting Chair Ellis.
Thank you, Diana. And good afternoon. I am calling this public meeting to order at 4:33 p.m. in accordance with the Building Emissions Reduction and Disclosure Ordinance regulations adopted pursuant to the Building Emissions Reduction and Disclosure Ordinance, Boston City Code Ordinance Section 7-2.2. The BERDO Review Board will hold a virtual public meeting at 4:30 on September 23rd to review the following topics in regard to the reduction of greenhouse gases from building energy production and consumption so as to promote the public health and welfare of Boston residents. In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain positions of the open meeting law, we are conducting this public hearing online. To ensure public access to the deliberations of the BERDO Review Board, the public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing. Members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment. To do so, please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9, send your questions to staff via email at berdoreviewboard@boston.gov. For the record, I am Stephen Ellis, acting chair of the board. I will now conduct a roll call of board members. Board members, please say your name in the order that they appear on the screen.
Rashida Boyd.
Stephen Ellis.
Hassan Faruqi.
Jack Nelson.
Staff will now introduce themselves.
Hannah Payne, Environment Department.
Diana Vasquez, Environment Department.
Claudia Diaz Martinez, Environment Department.
Ziggy Chin, Environment Department.
Here is the agenda for today. Here is the agenda for today's meeting and hearing. We are going to start with voting on the 4 building portfolios. Next, we will approve the meeting minutes from the last meeting, and then we will hear administrative updates. Then we are going to shift to our public hearing where we will have a discussion on the Equitable Emissions Investment Fund Awards for the 2024 application cycle. Finally, we will adjourn. We will hear some information about building portfolio applications, discuss and vote on the applications. I will now hand it over to Diana and Ziggy.
Great. I will kick us off for this portion. So just a quick reminder of what a building portfolio is. So building portfolios are what we call a flexibility mechanism in BERDO. This allows owners of multiple buildings that are subject to BERDO to comply with BERDO on a single portfolio emission standard versus a building by building basis. And so this is just one of those flexibility measures that we have within BERDO as a reminder of the different pathways. So we have different pathways and how to apply for a building portfolio. All of the applications that we're hearing today all applied via pathway 1. And so just a reminder of what that entails. So a building portfolio applying through pathway 1 are buildings that are all individually subject to BERDO and do not trigger what we call environmental justice requirements. So there is no hearing that is required for approval. And then options for voting, you can either, the board may approve with standard conditions, or the board can continue discussion and make a motion to vote at a next hearing to continue a motion to continue the vote. Thank you. Next slide, Ziggy. So the first application we'll discuss today is a building portfolio submitted by WGBH. So some background information on this. This building portfolio was submitted through Pathway 1. It includes 2 buildings, both located in the neighborhood of Brighton. The applicant met all eligibility criteria, and the application was deemed complete actually in the first review process. And so just again, another reminder of what the standard conditions are should the review board vote to approve with standard conditions. The standards conditions include timely compliance with reporting and third-party verification requirements, so the usual stuff with BERDO, timely compliance with a section of the regulations, including, when necessary, submission of a satisfactory emission standard compliance plan. Because this is Pathway 1, this is actually not required for Pathway 1. And then the review board or its designee may inspect a building that is part of an approved building portfolio at reasonable times with reasonable notice. So should the board feel the need for an inspection, that is also part of the standard conditions. Next slide. So here's just a quick summary of the application. So as I mentioned, the owner is WGBH. They have 2 building types in this portfolio, assembly and technology. There are 2 buildings, both of which are located in Brighton. And then this table below just presents the default emission standards for each individual building, and then the blended emission standards for the building portfolio should it be approved. Next slide. So now I'll hand it back to the board chair if there are any questions.
Thank you, Diana. So I will now ask each board member if they have any questions or comments. So starting with you, board member Boyd.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Chair. I guess I should mention really quickly, I believe we do have someone representing WGBH in case there are questions for the applicants themselves.
Thank you, Diana. Welcome the representative from WGBH if they are here. And turning it over to you, board member Boyd.
No, I don't have any questions right now. Thank you.
Thank you. With respect to this application, I thought it was pretty straightforward. I also don't have any questions. I think it makes sense, and I can turn my time over and move on to board member Faruqi.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Two questions are for the applicant. First would be why they're seeking this flexibility measure. Let's start with that, actually.
No.
If the applicant would like to introduce themselves as well, that'd be great.
I don't know if Eden, if you were planning on answering any questions. Sorry to put you on notice.
No, thank you. I can answer that question. We're looking to increase flexibility with this building just because one of the buildings especially has very high emissions and it will be a struggle for WGBH to reduce them. So looking at it from a portfolio application will just help lessen that burden for the next 25 years.
Great, thank you. And are there any other challenges that you anticipate with meeting those emissions benchmarks or other places you need support?
At this time, I am unsure if Aaron Camp, if you have anything to add to that.
Do you mind repeating the question? It wasn't totally clear.
Sure, yeah. Any places where you need additional support with reducing those emissions?
Oh, for this portfolio in particular? No, I don't think so at this time. We're one of the consultants for them. We're helping them figure out how to reduce their emissions, but I appreciate the offer.
Sure, absolutely. Not saying we can necessarily meet all of the, I'm just always curious. All right, thank you, applicants. No further questions for me.
Thank you, board member Faruqi. Over to you, board member Nelson.
Thank you. And thank you for moving the slide to this. Now, the portfolio emission standard, the bottom row, that was based on a mixture of the two, an assembly and a technology. And that was utilizing the percentage of square footage. Is that the way that was calculated?
Correct. So it's based on, yeah, square footage of each building use.
Okay. And where is all of the office space for WGBH? Is that in a mix within the 2 buildings?
I don't know if someone from Power Options has a better feel for the the buildings of WGBH.
One building is considered assembly completely, and the other building is considered technology. So neither of the buildings are mixed use.
I would just think you'd have a lot of office space. Okay, that's all the questions I have. Thanks.
Thank you, Board Member Nelson. I actually want to jump back to that question just to make sure that it's clear. So I'm understanding Board Member Nelson's question as like, is there a percentage of your building that is considered to be classified as office space, or is it just known that the entire building for one is technology and the entire building for the other is assembly? That's just the clarification I believe Board Member Nelson was seeking there.
That is correct.
Okay, not a problem. Are there any other questions from the board? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve WGBH applications building perform? Let me start this over. Is there a motion to approve WGBH's building portfolio application with standard conditions?
Motion to approve?
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. On the motion to approve WGBH's application with standard conditions, how do you vote? Please state in favor, oppose, or abstain. Board Member Boyd.
In favor.
I am also in favor. Board Member Faruqi.
In favor?
And Board Member Nelson.
In favor.
All right, the motion passes. The WGBH's building portfolio has been approved per the regulations of the Environment Department. They will send a copy of the written decision letter within 7 days. We will now be moving on to the next building portfolio application.
Great, thank you, Chair. I will continue the conversation now. So the next application received is from Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum. I think we can skip the slide since we talked about it. It's the same, except that the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum is a portfolio for 2 buildings, both of which are located in the Fenway area. Both buildings are used for museum, which under BERDO are classified as assembly. So actually, the blended emission standard doesn't really change for the building portfolio versus each individual building because they're both the same building use type. So that's pretty straightforward. And similarly, this building portfolio application was deemed complete and they meet all of the eligibility criteria. We didn't have any follow-up questions for them. So this was a pretty straightforward application to review on our end.
All right, thank you, Diana. I will now be, once again, asking each board member if they have any questions or comments. So I'll start with you, Board Member Boyd.
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Boyd. So my question for the Isabella Stewart, are there any representatives here, Diana, just out of curiosity?
Hi, I'm Michael Holland. I'm in the Director of Facilities and Operations for the museum.
Good afternoon, Michael. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us.
All right. So my question for the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, I'm just curious, how will this application benefit you all? Because one of the things I noticed is there's 2 properties of the exact same type, so not really seeing any changes in your emission standards. So I'm just hoping you can tell us a little bit more about how the portfolio might serve you.
Yeah, so if you're familiar with the museum, we have a historic building and a new building. The newer building, the issue is that some of our utilities for the historic building run through the new building. So it looks like it's really, overloaded in one building and not the other. So we have our chiller plant, our cooling towers, and heat and cooling coming from the new building. So that's the biggest issue. And this helps us spread it over both the square footage and kind of move forward.
Got it. So it's also going to be helping you with sort of planning, especially with the older building and renovations associated with that.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you, Michael. Those are all the questions that I have for now. I will now turn it over to Board Member Faruqi.
Thank you. Hi, Michael. My big question for you is what additional challenges you anticipate with the emissions reductions for this portfolio?
So I think our biggest challenge as a historic landmark will be what we can do on and around the building from a landmarks commission perspective.
Got it.
right? So that we're governed by Boston Landmarks Commission as well as Mass Historic Commission. So those I think will be our biggest challenges.
Great. Is the property or the series of properties in one of the historic preservation districts?
Well, we're in the Fenway district, kind of the Roxbury Fenway district, right, sitting right next to Simmons College. I don't think it's governed in an actual historic district, but the building itself is a landmarked building.
Sure.
Both buildings, actually, the historic building and the what we call the new building, which was an addition put on in 2012.
Great. Okay, great. And have you gotten to the point where you've had to have conversations with the Landmarks Commission about potential repairs or renovations?
No, we haven't. We are obviously, you know, the first few years of this BERDO and reducing and doing our reductions we've been lucky enough to kind of get the low hanging fruit to get below the threshold. And now we're looking at some of the longer term planning purposes and what that will mean.
Sure. Got it. Okay, great. All right. That's super helpful to know. So no further questions on my end. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Board Member Faruqi. Over to you, Board Member Nelson.
No questions.
Okay, just one more time. Are there any other further questions from the board? I know we have a quick roundabout here, but is there a motion to approve the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum's application with standard conditions?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
On the motion to approve Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum's application with standard condition, how do you vote? Board Member Boyd.
In favor.
I'm also in favor. Board Member Faruqi.
In favor.
And Board Member Nelson.
In favor.
All right, the ayes have it. The motion passes. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum building portfolio has been approved. Per the regulations, the Environment Department will send a copy of the written decision letter within 7 days. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you all for your time.
All right, and also thank you, Eden and Aaron, earlier. I forgot to say thank you to you two as well. All right, we will now move on to the next building portfolio application. Diana.
I'll take this one. So Codman Square Health Center, again, pathway 1, 2 buildings in the neighborhood Dorchester, same standards conditions that applies to the other building portfolio applications. The building use types include assembly, healthcare, food services, food sales and services, and education. Both buildings in Dorchester, and you can see their portfolio emission standards down below. One building does not have to start to comply until 2030. That's why it says NA under 2025 to 2029 because of the building size. But the city found the application to be complete with after the first round of review, and it meets all eligibility of pathway 1. And I think there is Eden also is here for this one. If you have any questions for her.
All right, thank you, Ziggy. And so we'll be communicating with you again, Eden. Thank you. All right, so I will now be asking again if the board members have any questions or comments. So I'll be starting with you, Board Member Boyd.
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Boyd. All right, so Eden, my question, if we can go back one slide, please. I just want to confirm for Codman Square Health Center that, this is actually going to be a beneficial move for these 2 buildings, and whether or not the organization had considered perhaps holding off on applying for a building portfolio until closer to 2030. The reason I bring this up is because by combining these 2 buildings into a portfolio, within your first year, your total emission standards are now lower than if you say wait until 2030. So I just wanted to understand if that was taken into consideration, and if it was, and this is what Codman Square Health Center would like to do, then we can definitely move forward. So I'm just wondering, Eden, can you provide us some enlightenment or some decision-making that was sort of discussed with the health center?
Yeah, we did take that into account, and we run an analysis on whether or not the portfolio application would save money for Codman Square, and it would help reduce the burdens for them.
Okay, So that, again, that lower blended emissions is beneficial in your case for that 2030. All right, not a problem. Well, thank you for sharing that. I have no further questions at this time. Over to you, Board Member Faruqi.
Thank you. Hi, Eden, again. Any challenges in terms of emissions reductions you anticipate with these properties?
I am unsure of that for now.
No worries. And no other questions on my end.
Thank you, Board Member Faruqi. Board Member Nelson.
I have the same question that you posed, Steve, and I don't understand that. But other than that, I have no further questions.
Very well. Okay. Is there a motion to approve Codman Square Health Center application with standard conditions?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second?
On the motion to approve Codman Square Health Center application with standard condition, how do you vote, Board Member Boyd?
In favor.
I am also in favor. Board Member Faruqi
In favor?
and Board Member Nelson.
In favor.
The ayes have it. The motion passes. Codman Square Health Center's building portfolio has been approved. Per the regulation, the Environment Department will send a copy of the written decision letter within 7 days. Thank you, Eden. We will now move on to the fourth building portfolio application. Is it Ziggy this time?
Yep, it's me.
No problem.
All right, so this one is from Pebblebrook Hotel Trust. It's 4 buildings in the neighborhoods of downtown Boston, Back Bay, and West End. Again, same standard conditions that applies to all the previous building portfolios. So these are their calculated blended emission standards for using their largest building type will be lodging. And we deemed their application complete after a quick issue that was fixed because they had to update their square footage for their fully enclosed parking and update their selection for same ownership on the NAC application. But after they fixed that, the city agrees that applying to Pathway 1 is the correct application pathway and has determined that the application is complete and meets all eligibility criteria of Pathway 1. And I believe there's also someone here from Pebblebrook Hotel Trust to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ziggy. I will now ask each board member if they have any questions or comments. I usually go back and forth here, so I guess I'll mix it up this time. Board Member Nelson, do you have any questions or comments?
No questions.
Thank you, Board Member Nelson. Board Member Faruqi.
Sure, I'm curious. Seems like if we could go back just one slide, please, that that all of these buildings fit within the same emissions category. So I'd be curious from the applicant why they're seeking this flexibility measure.
Yeah, so this is Alex Wojciechowski with Insight. We're a energy consultant for Pebblebrook, and we have a few representatives, including Carrie from Pebblebrook as well. So from our standpoint, and Carrie, you can jump in here, Pebblebrook has the ability to spend capital on improving all of their hotels, and we felt that this pathway allowed them the most flexibility to have the most environmental benefit across their whole portfolio instead of, if they're going building by building, they would, kind of be limited to focusing on just the properties that were above the target. So I think that flexibility was the biggest benefit for them.
Okay, great, thanks. And any challenges you anticipate with the emissions reductions process for the next 25 years?
Yeah, I think the one hotel, I think the kind of historic requirements around Liberty Hotel may be a bit of a challenge. I don't believe it's in a historic district, but that hotel obviously has some historical significance, and so that may be something longer term that will be a bit of a challenge.
Excellent. All right, very helpful. Thanks, Alex, and thanks, Carrie. No other questions on my end.
Thank you, Board Member Faruqi. Maybe this might be for either Alex or for the city. Can you repeat what you were saying earlier about parking and how that may have affected the emission standards here?
I can I can add in from the city's perspective. So fully enclosed parking does count towards BERDO gross floor area, and so it does count for your blended emission standard if it accounts for at least 10% of your total gross floor area. And fully enclosed parking is categorized under storage for BERDO purposes.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
Yep, that's helpful. So in this case, there is fully enclosed parking that is effectively lowering the emission standards here, correct?
Correct. I believe 3 of the 4 buildings have fully enclosed parking.
Okay. So I guess one of the things that I think might have been useful is just maybe including I guess this is primary. We're looking at primary types here, and that's why the parking is not really showing up across the board. So all right, that's helpful. Thank you, Diana. I think I can move on from there. Board Member Boyd, do you have any questions or comments?
No questions, thank you.
All right. Is there a motion to approve Pebblebrook Hotel Trust application with standard conditions?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
On the motion to approve Pebblebrook Hotel Trust application with standard conditions, how do you vote, Board Member Boyd?
In favor.
I am also in favor. How do you vote, Board Member Faruqi?
In favor.
And Board Member Nelson?
In favor.
The ayes have it. The motion passes. Pebblebrook Hotel Trust's building portfolio has been approved. Per the regulations, the Environment Department will send a copy of the written decision letter within 7 days. Thank you, Alex and Terry. Okay. Second on the meeting agenda is to approve the previous meeting minutes from September 9th. Are there any questions or comments regarding the meeting minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
On the motion to approve the meeting minutes, board members may vote in favor, oppose, or abstain if they did not attend the last meeting. Those in favor of approving the meeting minutes, say aye or show your hands. Aye.
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 Okay, the ayes have it. The motion to approve the meeting minutes passes. Now we will cover administrative updates. Ziggy.
Hi again. So I want to give an update on the open seat. We have received another nomination for the open seat, so that puts us up to 3 nominations. We sent the new nomination over to the mayor's office, and we're waiting to hear back from them. We have, for the numbers of our building portfolios and ICS applications, we're up to 18 building portfolios, and we're still at 4 ICS applications. We're currently working on reviewing the ICS and building applications that we received. There is going to be a commercial real estate working group meeting in mid-October that will discuss renewable energy. And then once that date is finalized, the event will be posted on the BERDO and the review board website. There's also an upcoming webinar that will provide an overview of BERDO compliance for condo associations. The webinar is on September 25th from 6 to 8 p.m. There is an event link on the BERDO Review Board website to register and to learn more. There's also another webinar as well about clean energy tax incentives that will provide an overview of tax incentives available for BERDO building owners, including tax deductions and tax credits. The webinar is on October 2nd from 12 to 1 p.m. and there is a link on the BERDO website to learn more about it and to register. So looking at our timeline, the review board members might have noticed that the cohort sessions for September have been consolidated into an hour-and-a-half session that will take place on September 30th that will cover power purchase agreements and renewable energy that we weren't able to get to at our last large training session. Now the cohort sessions have been moved to mid to late October instead, and if not, you will find those invitations in your inbox soon. Also wanted to remind you all that RDH does have office hours. If you need any technical assistance as you're reviewing the building portfolio applications or any other applications, we'll get to you guys. Office hours are at 1 p.m. on the first Tuesday and third Thursday of every month. I emailed all of you the instructions for that in the email. And then October 1st is our short-term hardship application deadline. And at our next meeting, we'll have 5 building portfolios for you all to vote on. And our next meeting is scheduled for October 15th.
Okay, thank you, Ziggy. Before we move on, I just want to check, are there any questions or comments from the board?
I want to thank the staff for doing the condo guidance in a dedicated way. That's a concern that I've heard from community members. So I know this is appreciated by many folks.
Thank you, Board Member Faruqi. Okay, I believe we can now move on to the next agenda item. Before we start this agenda item, would any board members like to recuse themselves? I'm going to assume no, since there's only one person that would need to do that, and she is not here today. We will now switch to our public meeting. I'm calling... Diane, I'm reading this language, is throwing me off
It
here.
should have been hearing. My bad. I apologize.
Okay, we will now switch to our public hearing. I am calling this public hearing to order at 5:03 p.m. We will now have a discussion and hear from the city about the Equitable Emissions Investment Fund awards. I will now pass it over to Diana.
Thank you, Chair. So just as a quick reminder of where we currently stand with the Equitable Emissions Investment Fund, during the September 9th public hearing, we invited 5 finalists to come and present on their project proposals to the review board. They include Green Energy Consumers Alliance, Fenway Community Development Corporation, Dorchester Bay Economic Development Corporation, the Community Builders, and Codman Square Neighborhood Development Corporation. And just as a reminder, here are the titles of their project proposals and the amount that they requested. So in terms of next steps, we have sent each of the review board members, barring anyone who recused themselves, a form to sort of ask any follow-up questions that you have. And so actually on the next slide, we have some follow-up questions that we have received from review board members. Originally, we think we were hoping to oh, I see a comment. Could you give a brief explanation of what the Equitable Emissions Investment Fund is? Sure, I can very quickly do a quick intro. So the Equitable Emissions Investment Fund is a new fund that was born out of BERDO, the ordinance. The fund mandates that any money from this fund goes to projects that reduce building emissions within the city of Boston and prioritizing environmental justice environmental justice communities in the city. So this is the first application round that we're having for the fund. So the inaugural application round for the fund. And so far we received 19 applications in total, and we've whittled it down to 5 finalists. We are now waiting to hear for any last submissions from the board for any follow-up questions before we can make a vote, because we originally were hoping to have a vote today, but I think there are just too many or some follow-up questions that I think will be necessary before we can finalize funding allocations. So one, I just wanted to share some of the questions we've received so far. And two, you're welcome, Jack. One, give a review of some of the questions received so far. Are there other questions that the board have so that staff can reach out to the applicants? And just a reminder to submit the form or questions so that we have as much board participation as possible. But that is sort of the summary we have. And then I think we have a board Q&A if the board has questions.
Thank you, Diana. Are there any questions or comments from the board that they would like to discuss? I am going to start with you, Board Member Nelson.
Nope, no questions.
Thank you, Board Member Nelson. Board Member Faruqi.
Yes, I did have one question pertaining to one of the applications, and that would be directed to the applicant that came up just recently. Is this the appropriate time to ask that?
Sure. I think if you have a question, we can take note of it and then get back to the applicant.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the question is for the Fenway CDC. As I was reviewing the recording from the last meeting, they had mentioned that they were seeking additional funding for their proposal from other sources, and that they would find out on September 15th. And so I was curious if we had heard anything back about whether or not they had received funding through that source.
No, to my knowledge, we have not heard word from that application, but that is a good reminder. We can reach back out to them and ask if they have any updates.
Great. All right. Thanks. No other questions for me right now.
Thank you, Board Member Faruqi. So Diana, I guess I'm just curious, refresh my memory in case it may be useful for the public, but after this round, when would we potentially have another round for the Equitable Emissions Investment Fund, meaning divvying out funds, and how do you propose that will look in the second round?
That's a great question. Do you mean like when will we have a second opening for applications?
Correct.
Yes, so that's a good flag. So the fund is an annual fund. So the regulations mandate that we open applications at least once a year. So next year, we were interpreting this as calendar year. I actually think this would probably be better if it didn't collide with some of the deadlines for flexibility applications. So my proposal to the board would be that next year's opened near the springtime, so it doesn't fall within the same realm as deadlines for building portfolios, individual compliance schedules, etc. Because I can imagine, as you probably are well aware, it's a lot to be reviewing. It's pretty involved. So I think that would be my proposal.
Thank you, Diana. Yes, and I think you've caught on to why I'm asking that question, because I can only suspect that this is it can be a bit of a tug on your mind to be switching between many different flexibility applications and then also trying to award funds at the same time. So, but thank you all for the work you have done to keep us clean and neat and on top of these things. I do hope that we get the final responses from the remainder of the board members to be able to at least approve this first round. And the only other thing that I would say is that, I thought this was a pleasant round to go through, a mix of decarbonization applications as well as solar related applications. And so I look forward to hearing who our final 3 finalists will be by October 15th. So I have no further comments or questions at this time. Turning it over to you, Board Member Boyd.
No comments, no question.
Thank you, Board Member Boyd. We will now open the meeting to public comment. As a reminder to members of the public, to provide public comment, please raise your hand or type in the chat in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. Send your question to staff via email at berdoreviewboard@boston.gov. Again, as a reminder, we are limiting questions to 3 minutes to ensure everyone has a chance to speak. We also ask members of the public to introduce themselves and their neighborhood. We will now wait to give members of the public the opportunity to provide comments. Okay, and Diana already answered the question from Jack M in the chat a little while ago. I'm just going to check up. My name is Jack, and I am trying to learn more about BERDO broadly. Is there an open office hours and individual I can reach out to specifically? I'll turn it over to the city for that one.
Sure. So hi, Jack. I think a good email, depending on what exactly you're hoping to learn about. If you could email berdoreviewboard@boston.gov. I can include that in the chat. It's an email that we use for general correspondence regarding the review board. So depending on your question, I think we can answer via email.
Diane, I'm reading this question as BERDO broadly, so I'm not sure that it's just strictly related to the review board. I think it seems to be a broader question, like BERDO in general and so on and so forth.
Yeah, hey, and can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I wanted to ask on the chat I didn't know if I was able to just like unmute and pop on. Yeah, just broadly in terms of I'm starting a job shortly that's going to be related to this, and we don't have to get into the details now, but You know, I've printed out all the ordinances and regulations. I'm reading them myself, which is fun. But like if there's somebody I can talk to and like do like a little virtual coffee hour with them or something like to that effect. I don't know if that is something you guys offer. Like I said, like if there's just an open office hours where I can go in and say like, hey, what does it really mean when it says this? Or like what it like just if that makes sense. Is that still that same email reach out to, or is there a better way? And Stephen, I appreciate you clarifying there.
I can answer that. Hi, Jack. I'm going to put it in the chat, but you can send your request to energy reporting at boston.gov or give us a call. We have staff on a help desk line. They can either try to answer your questions or direct you to another member of our team. We have office hours. They're more geared towards like looking at your building's emissions compliance. So it might not be the right person on the team to talk to. So if you send an email with what you want to talk about, it can help direct you to the right team member.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Hannah. That's very helpful. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you, Hannah. And thank you, Jack. And thank you, Diana. Are there any other questions at this time? And again, I always promise I'm going to do this going forward. Were there any emails sent to BERDO Review Board at boston.gov? Diana or Ziggy?
No emails received.
Okay. Now I think we can close the public comment period, and then I'll just check with the board one more time. Are there any further questions from the board?
One question, just to clarify that the questions that we had already posed in the form that were on the slide have been posed to the applicants, but we haven't received responses back, correct?
Correct. So I reached out Friday, so not too long ago. But we have not, I haven't received a response yet.
Cool. All right, great. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any further discussions or questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
On the motion to adjourn the meeting, board members in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. The ayes have it. The motion passes. This meeting is adjourned at 5:15 p.m. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank-
evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Be safe.